say that the feedback has been great, and more we get excellent individuals attending our show. Today, on my right is Mr. Hayden Gittens, a banker by profession who had 23 years experience with the RBTT Bank in Trinidad, another 2 years of financial management and consulting, and presently for the last 6 months has been the general manager of Bank of St. Lucia. On my left is an individual well known to St. Lucians, Dr. Claudius Preville, PhD in economics. Dr. Preville has had a vast experience worldwide, where he has been in the Pacific region, getting 14 countries together with trade capacity building and also negotiating the economic partnership between the Pacific and the European Union. Additionally, Dr. Preville spent 2 years in Ethiopia organizing projects of trade capacity bridging for a $5 million Euro program, providing technical assistance. So as St. Lucians can realize today, these are two heavyweights I have with me who will endeavor to enlighten St. Lucians on the way forward in certain areas based on what the world recession is doing to all our countries. At this point in time, I'm going to pose, I have 3 immediate questions for my guest, which we shall deal with numerically. The first being, most of the region, bar Trinidad and Tobago, have experienced limited growth and economic activities resulting in serious unemployment. Secondly, financial institutions have also experienced their fair share of difficulties with unusual delinquencies. And thirdly, it is now 5 years the region has been under economic stress and the outlook remains dismal. Based on those questions, I'm now going to ask Mr. Gittens to give his input as a banker, and then we will deal with the response as we go along. Mr. Gittens.
Thank you, Michael. And let me indicate it's a pleasure being here this morning. It's actually my first appearance on any basis in St. Lucia. And I'm very happy that you invited me. Well, I can't deny anything that you've said in your in terms of the last 3 points you've made. I mean, the region, and the Eastern Caribbean in particular, has been heavily and deeply impacted by the world recession, and it has similarly impacted the major sectors, the financial sector being one of them. Nevertheless, I mean, we still see opportunities within the region in terms of taking us out of the morass in which we find ourselves. And when I look across the landmark in St. Lucia and plan for the future, I see opportunities in manufacturing in particular. I mean, we have a couple of successful companies in the food manufacturing and beverage manufacturing sector. And we actually have started seeing some joint venturing, in particular between Trinidad and St. Lucia and some of the larger the LDCs and St. Lucia in the manufacturing sector. And the hope is that that continues because you have a mix of I guess large market expertise and the peculiar benefits that the Trinidad manufacturing has in terms of its manufacturing process, and the homegrown expertise in St. Lucia that come together to create a business that can be a competitive exporter out of St. Lucia. So we see opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We still see opportunities in the hotel sector. I mean, that particular segment of the economy has been hard hit by the worldwide recession, but throughout that period, we have done quite well at the high end of the sector, the boutique hotels. I think St. Lucia has developed particular expertise in that area, and we see scope for continued growth there. And in terms of utilizing the surplus plant that exists in terms of hotel assets in St. Lucia, we also see opportunities in terms of medical tourism, and tourism specifically focused on the growing elderly element of the society. So we can use the surplus rooms and the low capacity utilization to promote St. Lucia as a beautiful sunny destination that can appeal to those particular markets, and we certainly see opportunities there.
Hayden, you've mentioned medical tourism, and that has been a pet subject of mine for a long time. And as you may be aware, the National Hospital, which was funded by the European Union to the tune of some $300 million, is likely to be opened in the coming 6 months. And as we all know, the cost of running a hospital is tremendous. And I have highlighted on many occasions that we should look at the tourism side of it to help us both as a destination and also from a financial aspect. And based on that, I also mentioned that it is possible where you can bring in some retired physicians, specialists in their field, and address the situation, because these people have the connections, and additionally they have the wherewithal whereby the suppliers can bring in some equipment, because that's a very high cost. And it makes me extremely nervous when I don't hear from the powers that be what steps are being taken to drop the cost of getting this hospital going. By the Prime Minister's own admission, the two hospitals, which is St. Jude's and the new National Hospital, will cost the country some $50 million annually. I think it will be more like $80 million to run those hospitals. And I think at this point in time, the government needs to get together with the private sector and the powers that be within the private sector to address this thing, because this could be a drain on the economy. And already our finances are down. We don't want to come to your bank and request millions from you when these funding can be done from abroad. That's my little response to what you have just said. I don't know. On that score, I ask you, Claudius, to give me your input on what you have just heard.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to the program, Michael, and it's a pleasure to be here, and my first time to meet with Hayden. From my perspective, what I want to offer is the following. I think economic growth has been flat, and that is not a mystery. It's a fact confronting not only St. Lucia, most of the CARICOM states, certainly the smaller ones. My first area of focus would be on what is our country's vision for development. Economic growth will not happen by accident. We have to seek to have economic growth come about. Otherwise, there will be no growth. And so I have been saying this before on a few other programs, and I say it again. There is a need for a national vision. There has to be a vision for where we want to take St. Lucia. That vision is not the task of only one group or party. It's the task of the entire nation. We need to have a national task force set up, bipartisan, as well as all the other civil society bodies, etc., to sit and put a vision for St. Lucia together. Out of the vision, we have to develop annual plans to realize the vision. This is how we're going to have economic growth to start with. Now, I note the suggestions from Hayden about manufacturing, and I also think St. Lucia has some future in manufacturing, especially in the light manufacturing sector. I recall just about a month ago I was in St. Kitts Nevis, and I met with two of the major electronics assembly businesses in St. Kitts Nevis, and it's amazing to see how very small economies like St. Kitts Nevis has done so well, exporting electronics to the United States under the Caribbean Basin Initiative program, and doing so very competitively and very successfully, even in relation to countries like China. Yes, I talk about China, one of the most competitive countries in the world. And so, if tiny St. Kitts Nevis, with a population of under 40,000 people, can export certain kinds of manufactures to the United States, and they're now looking at Brazil, why can't it happen in a country like St. Lucia? So I think I would say, light manufacturing sector, there is a future for us. We need to find our niche. We need to have the right approach towards it. It's going to happen if we do it right. But I think more than that, the time has come when we need a new mindset. And that mindset has to be more of a service-oriented mindset, starting with the hotel sector and going beyond. So that the tourism industry, for example, we have the cruise ships. They come to St. Lucia. We have tens of thousands of tourists every month in the high season. How many of these tourists take a spa treatment at a local spa? Hardly any of them. Can't we brand our local spa offerings in a manner that we can lure some of this traffic into our local spas and make some money? We can sell a spa treatment for $100 US. What I'm talking about, we have the sulfur springs, that's ours. We have our botanical gardens, that's ours. We have a number of things that are indigenous to St. Lucia. So it's a matter of packaging and branding and offering in a way that makes it attractive for the visitor to leave the cruise ship and come and have a service in St. Lucia. I think of other industries in the services sector that need to be revisited. I think since 2002, there was a development of a national export strategy for St. Lucia. And at the time, a number of sectors were identified in the goods sector as well as in services where there is potential comparative advantage. We've not exploited it. So areas like information communication technology, areas like the health and wellness, I mentioned the spas already, areas like the construction sector, especially architectural and engineering related work, and so on. There is potential, but we are not leveraging this. So I think the time has come for us to start revisiting this, to see what can be done.
Two questions. St. Kitts, you first mentioned, who are the people in the manufacturing? Are they Kittitians?
Yes. As a matter of fact, there are two major companies. There's one called Jaro, and there's one called Cajola Cristada. Both of them are like joint ventures with foreign interests. However, they are driven by the local St. Kitts people.
And approximately how many people are involved, you'd say, in the manufacturing?
It certainly is in the vicinity of about 1,000 workers.
Wow. In
the manufacturing industry.
And mainly Kittitians.
And they are almost exclusively Kittitians.
Now, in your opinion, how were those people trained? Were they trained abroad? How did they get, or you know, certain islands are strong. For instance, I'll just give you a quick example. When I was in the shipping business, I was in the shipping business for 25 years, and I employed about 190 crew members.
Yes.
Most of the engineers actually came from St. Lucia, and the deckhands and the officers came from the Grenadines.
Okay.
So each island has their little, they have their pluses.
Yes.
Is it because the Kittitians were that way inclined, or you think the government, whoever did that, were focused on that industry and educated the people accordingly?
I would say it is probably a combination, because one of the things that Cristada said to me is that they had some intensive discussions with US Congress people back in the 1990s and 1980s even, where they actually brought out to them what the advantages were coming to St. Kitts Nevis to establish the electronic sector. So there has been some intensive lobbying that had to be done. And that is, I think, something St. Lucia can also learn from, you know, because we always, and a number of my colleague economists out there always talk about economies of scale. Your small economy, you can't do anything cost effectively to survive. That is not true. That's a myth. Okay, the truth is that if a small economy like St. Kitts, you find the right sector, you find the right product. They are doing, for example, relay switches, wire wound transformers, and these kind of products, and they have a very successful niche in the United States. They're exporting to Germany, and a number of German manufactured appliances coming back to St. Lucia now. The transformers and relays in them actually wound in St. Kitts. They are the most, I would say, the most aggressive as small economy in terms of accessing markets under existing trade arrangements that CARICOM has negotiated. St. Kitts Nevis is the only tiny island in CARICOM to have joined a partial scope agreement between Guyana and Brazil. They are party to this agreement, and they are looking at supplying the Brazilian market very aggressively. So I would say, if I look at their experience, and there are many more like it, you can look at the case of Mauritius, a much larger country in the Indian
Before we go
Ocean.
in that direction, shortly during the Cold War, when we had the CBI,
Yes.
Caribbean Basin Initiative,
Yes.
we had quite a few factories in St. Lucia.
Yes.
Apart from the garment factories, there were areas where I know they were doing electronics, because I was actually involved with one of them. I brought in some people here, and they were employing like 150, 200 people. But most of those places in St. Lucia have closed down.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm. I think it's but mind you, there are still one or two. I know, for example, North American,
Yes.
Ruston Taylor. He has a concern, ongoing concern.
In St. Lucia?
In St. Lucia, yeah.
Okay.
Doing
What do
some-
they do?
They do some electronics work. I can't tell you exactly what the product is.
How many people are involved in that ballpark?
I think he employs quite a few people.
Okay.
Certainly in the dozens.
Okay.
Of
And another
employees.
question I want to touch on is you spoke about the spas in Soufrière.
Yes.
Now, Alan, when he was Minister of Tourism, we made a trip to Arizona, and we saw the spa treatments, and actually brought down and had seminars down here to do exactly what you're saying, to have a spa at the Sulphur Springs.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate that this has not been pursued. But at the time when he was Minister of Tourism, the prospects look very, very good. So you were saying that is something we need to focus upon.
Yes, I mean, my point is this. We know the cruise ships offer some of the
You're
most
perfectly right.
sophisticated spas in the
Yeah.
world. So we cannot compete on the basis of being a fancy spa, but we can compete on the basis of saying we
Something
can
na-
provide something unique.
Something unique and something natural.
Whether it's the sulfur spring mud,
Yes.
you know, that we use, and we know of all its curative properties.
Correct,
You know,
yeah.
we can use that to appeal to
Just
the
like
guests.
the mud baths and so
The
forth.
mud baths, etc.
Hayden, you've heard our comments on it. As a banker, how does that resonate with you?
No, I endorse fully. I mean, the concept of long-term planning, which kind of went out of fashion for a few years,
I like
is
that.
critical. It's critical for small economies.
Yes, yes.
And I'm sure that when you say long-term planning, we are talking planning now for the next 20 years.
Yes, yes.
And because that will involve decisions made with respect to investment.
Precise.
I mean, the major area of the major deficiency, the major area of weakness in our economies relates to knowledge-based education levels at a mass level. Because you develop, once you make those investments, and those are large investments, you develop the critical mass in the particular industries, and you target for entry into a particular market at a particular time
Yes.
in the future. So I guess St. Kitts, the St. Kitts example is they would have started planning in the early 80s.
That's right.
To get to where they are today.
Today, yes.
Question for you. Listening to Claudius and my experience in Trinidad for the last 25, 30 years, I mean, they are very pro-manufacturing in Trinidad for a number of reasons. One, you had a good education in Trinidad. Secondly, because of the energy factor, you all have been able to experiment. And I consider really, in fact, even Jamaica will tell you, they're good at tourism, lead the manufacturing to Trinidad. Now, you from Trinidad, you were here with the Bank of St. Lucia. Is there anything you can do to assist us in your connections in Trinidad by bringing one or two people over on pilot projects to sort of go along with what Claudius is saying, to be able to reinvigorate the industry? Because as I mentioned earlier, in the Cold War days, we had, if I'm not kidding, between that type of manufacturing and also the garment industry, pretty close to 7,000 to 8,000 people at work. And these factories remain empty. I think the government has recently leased a couple out here and there, but that was done. This is the end of our first segment. We must take a short break. We'll be right back. This is Open Mic.